Junior Dragsters. My name is Bill. If you haven't learned about it yet, go ahead and check us out at Junior Dragster Plus. That'll be, I'll add a link at the bottom of this video here. And my username on the board is Wild Bill. Go ahead, ask it all the questions you want. There are no silly questions, just, we've heard it all before and we've all been there before. So go ahead, give us a shout out and check us out, and we'll all be more than happy to help you. Now, on to the video. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Learning Junior Dragsters. My name's Bill. Today, we're going to give you a quick overview and basic teardown and description component location of 28 Mikuni flat slide carburetor. Found typically on most 1290 cars. The basic starter carburetor that you're likely to run into. So I figured I'd just give you a basic rundown of how everything works and what you're going to be looking at if you end up having to tear into this to either change a throttle cable, change a jets. Hopefully everything you need to know to be able to give you a little bit of confidence to go about opening one of these up and try and help tuning it up. Unfortunately, this is an old used carburetor. I've grown out of 1290, so I don't have any of the I don't actually have any jets in it, and I don't have any jets for it. The 28 main and pilot jets are specifically for the 28 only. They don't interchange with anything like the 33 or the 42 or bigger carburetors. The air bleeds, they are the same as all the rest of the Mikunis from the 33 on up to the 48, 45s. This carburetor only has one air bleed. Works with the main jet. With the pilot jet, it has an air screw, but no actual air bleed for the pilot side. So let's get you zoomed in here and we'll start going over. Alright, now we got you zoomed in, moved up a little closer here. This is a 28 Mikuni flat slide. This would be the air filter side. This would be the side that actually goes towards the motor or into the boot on the intake manifold. Here's your fuel inlet. This port here is where your air bleed would go for the main side. This is your idle screw. This is your air screw for fine-tuning the mixture on the pilot side or the idle circuit. And then of course you have the throttle cable, and even if you pull up on the throttle cable, you can see how the slide comes up. And that's another interesting, another good point is if you do have to tweak the idle, or rev the motor real quick, if you do it by pulling the cable out, the cable can get hung up, the edge of the cable can get hung up here in this guide. I know Steve Waller and a couple other people sell an extended guide as well as a top idle adjust. I'll put up a picture of that here because I used to have one when I did run a 28. But very, very good system, because if you notice this idle screw, this is right where your exhaust header is, and when the motor's running, you can get some burned fingers doing that. I've burned quite a few fingers, which is why I went with the top idle adjuster and the extended cable guide. Made for a whole lot nicer, running the 28. Here I'll give you a quick demonstration of the idle screw. You watch the slide as I run the idle screw in. See if I can get you a little closer. You see how that slide is opening up? And there it just opened up all the way. I'll back the idle down. That'll move that slide back down. So there's, adjusting the idle with the factory idle screw. Alright, as we, oh, one other thing. This is your fuel bowl overflow. Generally it will have it could have one of these, long black plastic tubes on it to route it away from, any components, so alcohol doesn't, if alcohol does get too full in the bowl, because either your needle and feet are set too high, your flow level set too high, or what have you, or it's just pushing past and you have a bad needle and feet, alcohol run out of this overflow tube, and then you got to look at that needle and feet position or the float. We'll take that off, get that out of there. On the bottom you see you have a big hex nut on the bowl. This will allow you to not only drain the alcohol out of the bowl without taking the carburetor off, but will also allow you access to the main jet. It is 13/16. And yes, I've already had this off. So take that out, and you can see right there is where your main jet would be. If I had one for this carburetor, I would have put it in before I started filming, but I don't. Oh well. I work with what I got. Like I said, you could then use a little socket or a nut driver if you had one the appropriate size to fit the hex of the main jet. You could swap out the main jet without having to take the carburetor off of the car. And that just screws back in there. Give it a little, tighten it up a little bit, and you're good to go. And that's a really good feature right there, because taking the carburetor off while it's attached to the car, or while it's all still set up on the car, can be a little bit of a chore, because there is no way, while the cable is still attached to the car and set up on the throttle pedal, there is no way to disconnect the cable from the slide so that you can get the carburetor off and on the bench. Usually what I would do was just take these two screws off. I would remove the whole top and slide assembly, as everything as an assembly, and then take the carburetor over and work on it on my bench or on the trailer or whatever I needed to do with it, and then put it back together. And I'll show you how I did that. As I kind of try and work backwards around here and twist it around the camera. But, another good thing, if you don't have one yet, pick yourself up a little ice cube tray like that. It works great for keeping track of all the little hardware. But as you can see, if the cable is still attached to the car, there's no way, because the cable is actually attached down in here through this spring, so there's no real way to get that out. And like I said, I would just typically take this off, take this out, spray it with brake clean and WD-40 as before I put it all back together. Go do whatever I needed to do with the carburetor, and then come back and put it back together. As you can see, there's, right here, there's a little bit of a, protrusion. Fits in with this, if I can get it. See that little slot there? So the slide only goes in to the carburetor one way. Now I'm going to put it back together. And you'll have to compress that spring quite a bit. But I'm going to put it back together and show you guys how to Put the top back on just finger tight so I can show you guys how you go about removing the throttle cable. That seems to be one of the biggest questions that's always getting asked, is how do you remove the throttle cable on one of these 28s? Because you can't actually see what's going on in there, so I'm going to show you. First thing you need to do, and I've just got a couple nuts here at the other end of the cable that would simulate the throttle pedal connection. Typically you would have a cable nut, you know, where it's attached to the throttle cable. You can see as I pull on this nut, I'll open the slide just like you would if you were stepping on the gas. And then one more thing while we're talking about the throttle cable, you want where the cable comes into the top of the 28, you want that to be as long as straight, you know, right here you want it to be a straight shot as possible. So you really want a nice long curved loop, because if you let it get kicked over like this real tight or bent over, you know, you can actually start giving yourself, you know, some headaches, or you can actually even have the carburetor either too tight or have it stick open and not be able to close when your driver lets off the gas. So make sure you have a nice, you know, straight trajectory with the cable in as big of an arc as you can, so it can come straight down and not get hung up, or not allow itself to get hung up. Now I'm going to take this, because we're going to have to take this sheath off of the, or give it a lot of slack. So if this was on your car, you'd go down by your throttle pedal and loosen your cable collet so that you can take your throttle cable and slide it to where you can pull the cable out. Now you can see we've got quite a bit of cable that we can work with. So it gives us quite a bit of room. You don't have to take the cable all the way out of the sheath. But you do need to have some slack there on the top. Now I'm going to take these screws back out. Now hold this top down, because that spring that's under there will push it up, and gently release the spring pressure, and take out everything. And you can see just how long that spring actually is. It's quite a long spring. Alright, now you guys can see how the cable goes in. There's a cable pull there. This green thing is the actual retainer, keeps the cable from pulling out of that guide channel. And get that out, get a pair of needle nose pliers, grab on that tab, just pull that out. Sometimes, you know, if you tip it over, it might just slide out. Then you take your cable, push it down a little bit, move it towards the outside, and it'll come right out. If you want to put it, you know, when you go to put it back in, see if I can get a good shot of without my fingers in the way. Let's try with the needle nose pliers so maybe you guys can see what's going on here. You just reach in there, get the barrel down into the retainer, pull up on it a little bit. Now you can see, like I said, that with the D shape that only goes in one way. And you want to make sure that's lined up because that notch that you just pulled it out with actually lines up in the groove to help close off that hole or that slot so that the cable can't come out accidentally. And that's all there is really to taking the cable out. And then you can pull the cable out of the sheath and out through the top of the spring nut. And see there, I just tipped it over. And then you can see as you take, this cable will not go through the cable guide nut. So you would either have to take this cable guide nut off or pull the cable the entire length of the sheath and the guide nut, take it apart, take it out that way. I'm just going to set it aside because we're not going to need it anymore. Alright, one more thing as we're talking about the slide. You'll hear people talk about cutting the slide. As you can see, this slide was already cut. They just took the, follow the contour, scribe a line, like an 1/8 inch or a 1/16 of an inch. You don't want to take too much. And then you just massage that open down to your line. I'm not actually going to do any more grinding on this slide because I don't want it to. I don't want to grind too much off of it and have it become unusable in case I do want to end up wanting to sell it or let somebody borrow it to try it or what have you. The other thing you'll need to know how to get this needle out. There are, if I can hold it in the right orientation here. There we go. I think you can see in there now. There are 2 Phillips head screws down here on the bottom side of the D. Take yourself like a number 1 or a number 0 Phillips head screwdriver. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this on camera. I don't think you guys can see anything anyway. My hand's in the screwdriver in the way. It's a good idea to lay your screwdriver on a magnet to magnetize it to help you pull those screws out. You don't need something as bulky or as big as a magnetic screwdriver, but if you just lay your screwdriver tip on a magnet for a little while, it'll magnetize it enough to where it'll pull the screw out. And then you can tip it over, and there's the cable retainer. You can see how that tab on the plastic part of the retainer fits in there, so it can't it closes off that hole. It closes off that slot so the cable can't fall out and kind of locks everything in there. But with this out of the way, then you can take your needle out. This might be a little difficult for you to see, but you have a series of grooves here at the top of the needle with the Jesus clip. You know why I call it a Jesus clip? Because after you pop it off you go, geez, where did that go? And then you never find it again. So be very careful when you go to pop this off if you need to change the position of the needle. Because raising the needle will effectively richen your air fuel charge, and while lowering your needle or moving the clip up will allow more of the needle to stay in the main jet and the emulsion tube and effectively lean out the charge going to the motor or slow down the charge going to the motor. Then to put it back together, you just drop your needle down in. It only fits in one way. And this is where magnetizing your screwdriver really comes in handy. Just getting these screws started. Did I get it started? Yes, I did. And just snug them up. They don't have to be super tight, just snug. Crank them down too tight, you may not ever be able to get them out if you end up with some corrosion from the alcohol in there. Just snug both of them down. And that's everything, or pretty much covers all the basics on at least the slide and taking the cable out and adjusting the position of the clips on, or the clip on the needle, so you can adjust the position of the needle. Alright, back to the main body of the 28. Similar to the 33, if you watch the video I did on the 33, you got 4 screws. I'll hold the bowl in. Let's go ahead and pop those off. Yeah, this carburetor still has the Phillips head screws in it. These Phillips head screws I found tend to get chewed up rather easily over time, and if you watch my 33mm video, they take the same size screws as the 33, so I lifted the metric bolt size in the 33mm carburetor video to where you can replace those with an Allen head cap screw, which I found to be a whole lot better to work with than the Phillips head. Alright, here we got the 28 opened up. Get the bowl opened up. You got your floats. You got your needle and seat right in here. Replacing the needle and seat would be just like I showed in the replacing the needle and seat video on the 33mm carburetor. You got a pin right here. Knocks out this way. You can see the larger head here and where you'd punch it through right there. And then you just remove the pin, take the floats off, take the needle and seat off the floats, and this would be where your main jet goes, as we saw when we took the nut out of the bottom of the bowl. Down in here, this hole here would be where your pilot jet goes, and you would need a relatively small flathead screwdriver to take the pilot jet out, examine, clean, change, what have you. And like I said, unfortunately I don't have any jets for this carburetor, but should be pretty self-explanatory once you learn where the locations. Like I said, this is your main jet, this is your pilot jet, and this would be where your air bleed went. Good rule of thumb to remember about the air bleed, if you had two, the air bleed for the main circuit is always the one at the 6 o'clock position, or directly in line with where your needle would go. And that pretty much, I think, sums up at least the basics on the 28 Mikuni flat slide. Alright, thanks for watching, and I hope this helped you out.